Our project is the Temperance movement.
It's by Cassy
and Katie McCusker. The temperance movement of the 19th and 20th century encouraged moderation of how much alcohol people were consuming. They also pressed for complete abstinence.
The main group that took part in this movement were women and children because they were the ones who it had the most effect on. This was the first social reform that women participated in. Most of the women that were leading it were Christians and believed that people who drank lost their faith in God and did not learn from Jesus.
Because of this, they got a lot of Protestant churches to view drinking as sinful. They blamed alcohol for society's ills, which included severe health problems, poverty, and crime. Eventually, many people started realizing the issue of alcohol and pledged to not drink it. Preachers supported this pledge, and a main supporter was John Guff. In 1808, temperance associations were established, and later on, in 1813, they were established in Massachusetts.
At first, they started off encouraging men to voluntarily stop drinking, but then they started protesting because they were concerned about the well-being of families. This is where it got its name from, because it first tried to make people temperate in their drinking, which means to lessen the amount.
More and more people started believing in this because evidence was showing the effects of alcohol. Susan B. Anthony was one of the leading females of this movement. Another leading person of this was Benjamin Rush, and he preached about moderating alcohol intake.
Progressivism was the movement for social change between the late 1890s and World War I. It was a fear of big businesses and corrupt government. However, it was also a desire to improve the lives of countless Americans.
The progressives, which were people involved in this movement, set out to cure the social ills brought about by industrialization and urbanization, social disorder, and political corruption. It reflected the worry about the state of society and had a sense of crisis along with urgency.
The temperance movement connects to progressivism. They connect because the temperance movement took place during the progressive era, and they were the result of rapid urbanization and industrialization. People had more time on their hands, so they would end up in saloons.
When this happened, many men were constantly getting drunk. Women wanted to rid society of this problem, which is what progressivism was all about. They believed that by taking away alcohol, they would rid society of some of the social ills and less crimes would occur because people would not be drunk anymore.
Women were subject to violence in their homes because their husbands would come home drunk, and this is a social disorder that progressives would also want to end. During the temperance movement, women and children would protest outside of saloons with signs, which is exactly what other movements during the progressive era were doing.
Progressivism and the temperance movement were supported by the middle class.
The temperance movement ultimately won a ban on alcohol because other people started to see the problems it was causing. Congress eventually passed the 18th Amendment that prohibited the making, transportation, and consumption of alcohol.
Although reformers direct much of their energy toward political issues, they also crusade on behalf of what they term moral concerns, like the campaign to eliminate alcohol from the national scene.
Prohibition is really an excellent example in the way in which moral values, religious values, influence public policy, become really central issues in the political arena, which is very typical of the 20th century at different periods. And so prohibition is an example of the way in which organized political pressure on the part of a variety of reform groups that include a lot of women's groups, such as the Women's Christians Temperance Union, helped to get a national amendment passed that makes the country dry.
In 1917, advocates of prohibition succeed in getting Congress to support a constitutional amendment banning the sale and manufacture of alcoholic beverages. 2 years later, it is ratified by every state except Connecticut and